I can't verify this actually 100%, but I'm going to make this statement, and maybe someone has been sued more than I have, but I'm pretty certain I'm the most sued podcaster.
Hey, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Todd Chambers, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. So for the people that don't know you, who the hell is Nathan Latka?
You know, it's a funny question. I ultimately am whatever people describe me as, and people describe me as very different things depending on who you talk to. So I'd turn that back around on you. How would you describe what I'm working on from your own perspective?
I would say you're an entrepreneur. I would say you're a bit of a hustler. It seems like you have your finger in many different pies. I would say you're an expert in SaaS. And I would maybe layer that with, as you said, potentially controversial in the eyes of some people. I think maybe the way you communicate, you're very direct, can potentially rub people up the wrong way. But I think maybe you're just a bit misunderstood. So that's how I would summarize you.
Well, you're much nicer than I am. Yeah, I mean, I can't verify this actually 100%, but I'm going to make this statement, and maybe someone has been sued more than I have, but I'm pretty certain I'm the most sued podcaster, because when I launched the podcast, I made a promise to myself. You know, I didn't want to be Tim Ferriss and record 4-hour episodes. And I also didn't want to be, John Lee Dumas and record 15-minute episodes that were sort of fluffy about like, what's your biggest failure? I wanted short episodes with SaaS founders that were really hard hitting. And, I now have a situation where founders come on, we fall in love, they share great data, rich data, valuations, what they pay themselves, their profit sharing, their last round valuation, but then their boards hear it and they send me a cease and desist and I get in trouble, but I ultimately end up winning most of those. So that's where the controversial part, I think, probably comes in.
That's absolutely crazy. How did the podcast start? So I have a bunch of questions around kind of the origin story of yourself, but you originally had a company called Heyo, I think it was called, right? Which was that kind of your first endeavor into entrepreneurship? Like maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I was 19. I was an architecture major in the mountains of Southwest Virginia.
Architecture.
At Virginia Tech. You learn a lot, by the way, when I now write angel checks and a founder tells me that they were an architect major or a theater major, I'm almost always interested because you learn so much about empathy. And many SaaS companies, the reason they fail is they don't know how to build empathy into the product. They just tackle it from like a pure like numbers or pure like UI perspective, but empathy is critical. So yeah, I was an architect major, but Todd, there was a slight problem. I loved money. And to make money being an architect, you had to it was almost impossible. You had to be like 0.0001 top percent to go build like the Guggenheim, which I was never going to be. So I started selling actually much like you're doing. I launched a very small agency. You're probably much larger than I ever was, but I was selling one-off custom Facebook fan pages and ultimately said the way to scale this is I don't want to spend 10 hours delivering each of these individual professional services sales. I'd rather build a drag and drop tool like Weebly or Wix would do for a website, but build that so people could pay me a monthly fee to drag and drop Facebook apps together. And that's when I found my developers. That's when I launched Heyo, and that's when I learned what SaaS was.
And you were like 19 years old.
Yeah, I was probably 20 to 21 at the point that I pivoted from agency to SaaS company. But again, I didn't know it was a SaaS company. This was just a way for me to scale my time without having to do work. So you charge a lower recurring fee, but not do any professional services work.
What did you mean specifically on the empathy side? I'm really interested in what you meant there.
Well, to me, look, empathy is about emotions. My empathy today comes across in a lot of the copy that I put out. I think I have a very unique ability. I mean, look, I think this because people tell me this and I go, you know what, you're probably right? They say, Nathan, I open all your emails. Like the copy is always really interesting. It makes me curious every time. Like I learn so much, so copy to me is what empathy means. And then how you position the copy will determine how you drive your onboarding flows, your upsell funnels, things like that in your SaaS product.
100%. I mean, I know, we offer copywriting services, conversion rate optimization. We'd interview people that are specialists in copywriting, and you have to speak to the real world motivations and the pain points because people buy an emotion, right? And then they reason with logic. So I think what you're saying is speak to the humans behind it and don't just think about the numbers and the revenue and like us. That's kind of what you're trying to say.
It's the reason why today when I see a SaaS company who's not investing in building a community, I'm not interested. You
Really?
know, it's so easy to rip off code today. The only real business moat a SaaS company has is the community. You know, you recently had Guillaume on with Lemless. People should go re-listen to
Yeah.
that episode, right? I mean, he was able to turn down that offer because he's built an incredible community and he could probably sell them anything. He just happens to sell an email outreach tool right now called Lemlist.
Yeah. Super cool guy, by the way. He's yeah, like you said, he's built such an amazing community, and yeah, what does he call them? What is the Lemlisters? Yeah,
The
like his
Lem
community of the Lemlisters. Yeah,
the
indeed. So
Lemlisters. Yeah.
so you had this SaaS product Heyo. How long did you run it for? Like how long did it take to build? Yeah,
Well,
how big
I
was the
made a
team?
lot of this was my SaaS education, right? I mean, I learned a lot. I scaled that bootstrap from my dorm room to about 60,000 bucks a month in revenue. And that's, you know, a lot of people do podcasts, they do stuff like this and they just spew numbers with no proof. As you know, I'm a proof oriented guy, which is why on page 6 in my book, I put my tax returns from that year, 2013. And you can actually see the revenue when I was 21 in my dorm room. You see what we hit. And ultimately, what happened was when we started having a success, I had investors reach out asking to invest. And I thought, of course, I want a TechCrunch headline. Like, of course, I want to raise capital. So they gave me, you know, 2 million bucks at an 8.5 million pre-money valuation. So 10.5 post. I was like the richest student on campus, living in like the most beautiful penthouse apartment above the theater downtown. I'm like, this is what it feels like. This must be what it feels like. But then you quickly realize it is a whole different ball game. Whole different ball game. My happiness went down. Our cash flows went down. My team got less creative because their answer to every problem was throw money at it. I had a board that I hate. Took 7 hours a month, 10 hours a month to put together reporting documents for. Whole different world. So it ended up, in my opinion, it was a massive mistake. You know, we got an acquisition offer from iContact to sell the business for $6.5 million slightly after the time that we raised. And I had to say, I would have taken it. You know, I still owned 60% of the business at that point. So you can do the math on what I would have made on that sale. But the board basically said, Nathan, we just invested at a 10 post money. We want to see you scale to 100 million. Don't sell for 6.5. And they blocked it. Right. So you lose. So the thing with raising capital, you lose so much optionality. And in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, optionality is the king, not a TechCrunch headline promoting a big valuation.
So what did you do? So they blocked you from selling. So how did things kind of manifest?
Well, this was my biggest mistake. I should have insisted that we sell the business because the timing was right. What I did instead was I kept running the business for another 3 years, partly because I was comfortable. You know, I was CEO, we had revenue, I was paying myself, I think, 125 grand, right? As a very young person, that was like, and I had almost no expenses. I was saving money like crazy, investing in real estate, all this stuff. I shouldn't have done that. Those are your best years of your life. Most flexibility, you're single, there's no kids, you have very low expenses, your health is good usually. I should have gotten out earlier, but what I did is I waited too long and I flash sold the business in 2015 at a loss. And part of the reason I launched my podcast, The Top Entrepreneurs, in 2015 was because I didn't want other founders to go down that same funding rabbit hole that I did without understanding what you're actually doing. A TechCrunch headline spikes your traffic one day and then it's gone. But raising capital can make your life a living hell if you don't understand what you're getting into.
So true. We work with loads of different SaaS companies, and they're founded and sorry, they're funded. And the thing that always sticks out to me is that they make kind of really short term. Their strategies based on kind of short term thinking. It's like, okay, we need to grow, we need to get to the next round, and kind of everything is often dictated from that kind of that thing over your shoulder. You have this funding, and I totally agree. You know, the optionality to kind of you're in control of your own destiny, right? It's super interesting. I had no clue that you started the podcast because you had that really, really bad experience. And that was kind of my question. Did you start the podcast as a way to kind of grow that SaaS business, or did it come afterwards? And I guess that's answered that question. So
No, it was
you,
it was
oh,
totally
sorry.
separate, completely
Yeah,
separate. But like when you look at it from a financial perspective, the money I made in my, between 19 and 25, a lot of people think like I made a bunch of money on the Heyo exit. I made nothing on the Heyo exit. My money from Heyo came from the large salary I was paying myself before we raised capital because I was in full control and I bootstrapped it, right? Like, and
Which,
then
yeah.
like
Sorry.
for context, the first large sponsor deal we landed for our podcast was worth way more than all the money that I made at Heyo over my first 5 years building a SaaS company, right? Media is very powerful.
So you started the podcast, and yeah, for anyone that's listening to your podcast, you obviously have a very direct style, and you just touched on it there. You wanted to extract the numbers, the value. You didn't want any fluff. You wanted there to be like that, right in that sweet zone where people could listen to it and just get like a ton of value. So how did that go in the early days? Was that like, okay, I'm going to try and make a podcast that I would want to listen to? Like, what was the kind of the thinking behind it?
The podcast was just a way to set up an environment that was ripe for me to get what I wanted, which was data quickly, right? I'm in the lead position as the podcast host. My guest is in a position where they are already in a predisposition spot to know that they're going to have to answer questions, right? So I have permission to sort of go and ask these questions. And the only question is how deep and how fast and how many questions can I ask in a 15-minute period? So the podcast was just the right mousetrap to sort of set up the system to like learn quickly. And that's what I was optimizing for.
But what was the kind of the end game then? I mean, you were you thinking, okay, I'm just going to build this podcast and then monetize it, or was it like I'm going to set up an investment fund and this gives me data and like, yeah, what was the end game?
Well, look, I think a lot of sort of people that are full of hot air would say this was all tactically planned. They have success and they say it was strategic. I planned it from the start. It's all bullshit, right? The best founders pivot really quick. They do things they love and then they figure out how to monetize later. And I was the same way. I had no idea what the podcast would turn into. Now, some things I learned since 2015 was a couple things. One, there's a lot of podcasts. So if you're not entertaining, you're going to lose, even if you're smarter than everybody else. There's a lot of very smart people that can't hold audience, and they wonder why these people like Jake Paul get all the attention, because the guy's entertaining. You have to entertain, and that earns your right to then educate. A lot of people are really bad entertainers. So the reason I've amped up the aggressiveness is because it's more entertaining. My retention metrics on the podcast go up the more controversial an episode is. So I will always be and always try and be more direct, shorter, and more to the point.
You seem to lean into that kind of being controversial. Again, is that strategic decision to do that?
I mean, 100%. It's math.
Yeah.
It's biology. I mean, if you remember, guys, from chemistry, the one thing you learn is every action or every force has an equal and opposite force. And if it doesn't have an equal and opposite force, it doesn't exist because mass is neither created or destroyed. So for you to create a movement and a massive audience of lovers, you have to have an equal and opposite opposing force of haters. If you don't, you have nothing. So it's really important you invest in building both at the same time. You can't just do one. It's a marketplace model.
So in the beginning, when you were starting the podcast, I'm sure like everybody started off slow. You barely had any people listening to it. Like, how long did it really take you to kind of make a success of it? Because you seem like someone that just grinds. You seem like a real worker. I mean, you put out like one podcast a day, and we struggle to get one out every couple of weeks. So just how hard was that to get the thing going in the early days?
Well, you have to love it. I mean, we just recorded our 3,035th episode. You
That's
can't
insane.
do that without loving what you're doing. So you have to love it. Early on when I launched the podcast, I hustle and I grind, but I also want to be smart. And so I said, what can I do to incentivize people to share their episodes early on? So I basically recorded 60 episodes before we went live, and then emailed everyone and said, hey, I'm only picking 10 to go live on day one. For you to claim a spot, just reply back to this email and say that you're willing to promote your episode to your email list. So the first 10 that said yes, we had almost 3.1 million emails going out in the first week promoting the podcast. So we actually went from nothing. It might have been the fastest show ever to go from 0 to 1 million downloads. It took about 2.5 months.
Super smart. And actually, I learned that from you as well. I can't remember. I was listening to a piece of your content about the podcast, And now when I'm thinking about guests, it obviously makes sense to leverage someone that already has an audience and someone that's willing to be there to help you promote it, right? So yeah, super smart move.
It's really hard though. This is hard to execute because this comes down to empathy. You can't do this in such a direct way where it pisses off the person, right? So you have to sort of say it in a way that's non-threatening, and it's sort of like both sides can win. And getting the art of like that statement correct is not easy.
How did you get people to be so transparent about their revenue? I mean, like you can pretty much ask, it seems like you pretty much ask whatever you want and people are willing to answer. How difficult was it to get people to sign up to that in the early days? I mean, now I guess it's easy because you have a big audience and it's, there's value in it for them. But in the early days, how did you achieve that?
Well, we just started, so it didn't start this aggressive. It got more
Okay.
aggressive when I realized it was working. And working for
See.
me was defined as number of people listening and how long they listened and how many subscribers and reviews. But I mean, we now, a couple of weeks ago, Divi exited to Bill.com for 2.4 million. Alex Bean, one of the co-founders of Divi, came on my podcast a day before the announcement. That's crazy. Usually CEOs, if they're about to sell, if they're going to sell tomorrow for $2.3 billion, do you think they're doing media interviews the day before that could jeopardize the sale? Heck no. But we got the interview, right? And now that's like a piece that's doing very well on YouTube because of the context of when it happened. So you look, part of the reason a lot of CEOs come on my show is they actually want to talk about the numbers,
Yeah.
right? But their board sometimes doesn't want them to. So I'm their excuse. They can just tell the
Gotcha.
board, look how hard he pushed me on the show, guys. I had no choice. But the entrepreneur wants to talk about the revenue and valuation. They want to talk about their story. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what else are you doing? So you have the podcast, you've also written the book, you have your own fund, you have a subscription to, all the data on these SaaS companies. Like, what are the main kind of business ventures you have right now?
The biggest question I got once we published our 1,000th episode was, Nathan, I'm a SaaS founder. I'm trying to scale from 1 to 10 million in revenue. Which episode should I listen to first? And there wasn't an easy way for me to answer that. So we built getlatka.com, Latka, to basically index all of the audio data. So every time a CEO said, our last round valuation was 6 million, we pull out 6 million, we put it on their company profile and underline it. So now you can go to GetLatka, click any data point, and hear the CEO explaining why churn was 6%, the number one growth tactic they used to go from 1 to 10 million in ARR, why Guillaume paid each 3 founders $444,000 last year, $100,000 base and $350,000 in dividend payouts. So it's all linked up. So GetLatka came because that's what my audience wanted. And then what happened was we started getting SEO traffic and people said, do you have more data? I'm willing to pay for it. So we launched subscriptions on GetLatka. And that's sort of how that got going. Now, the book was totally different and the magazine was totally different. The book happened because publishers would put their authors on my show during book launch week and they would see how much I moved them up the Amazon rankings. And it was always a massive impact. So they knew I could sell, which is all publishers care about. And eventually I was able to run a bidding war to get a great book deal to publish my own book. And now anyone listening right now, you can find that the next time you go to the airport in the airport sort of Hudson bookstores.
Tell us about the book.
It's a good, I mean, have you seen it?
I haven't read it. I've read a few summaries of it and I've heard you talking about it.
Yeah, some summaries are great. Yeah, the book is really a collection of short stories. My thesis was people needed to be able to get the book, open it to any page, and see a headline or a screenshot that interests them, read 2 pages, and get value. So it's a collection of a bunch of ways I generated revenue, built stuff between the ages of 19 and 29. And the book's called How to Be a Capitalist Without Any Capital. And so the book, my goal on that was just to get to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. We sold about 7,000 copies in the first week and hit it. And now, we really enjoy it, right? Folks buy it, they take pictures of themselves reading it, they tweet it to me, etc. We just passed sort of 30,000 sales, and the book is what ended up driving the magazine growth. So, I'm happy to dive into that if you think it's interesting. Yeah. But the magazine is actually, I copied the magazine idea from Russell Brunson at ClickFunnels. They've bootstrapped to $100 million plus in revenue because Russell recovered. He built this genius funnel to recover CAC on day, like the instant that the first checkout happened. And that's what I'm doing with the magazine.
Interesting. Yeah, tell us about the magazine.
So the magazine started off as, here's sort of what it looks like, right? It's highly focused on SaaS. Now, this whole thing is generated from podcast transcripts, right? And then what we
Gotcha.
do is we will then print off inside essentially a list of all the data. Like we'll list the companies, the valuation metrics, the revenue, the funding round, etc. But it started off as it's free if you pay $8.99 shipping. But now what we do is you can buy the magazine. It's $29. So I think it's the most expensive magazine out there. I don't know that I've ever paid that much for a magazine. But it's because I saw people getting the magazine at conferences, and they would go in and open it and they'd circle companies in the list that they wanted to go meet or follow up with. And I'm like, oh my gosh, in the magazine checkout funnel, I should upsell the Excel file with the data. And so our average checkout value now on nathanlatka.com/magazine is about almost $550 per checkout because of how the funnel works. So it's a very profitable funnel, and we use that to then go upsell, the other stuff we're working on.
Something that strikes me about you, Nathan, I think this is maybe, I don't want to step out of line here. It's more like the American way. I mean, your book is, about capitalism, but you said it in the beginning, you like money, right? Is that the thing you think that really drives you? Is it like you're just an ambitious dude, just under the skin, or are you like really trying to become a billionaire? Like, what drives Nathan Latka, to do all this stuff and to hustle every day?
I mean, I will build an amount of wealth that I think will surprise even your listeners today. Just give me enough time, and it will happen, and they'll read about it, and they'll go, I remember when Todd interviewed that guy, and he said it, and look, it happened. So it will happen. But I will tell you, money's not what drives me. Competition is what drives me. I absolutely love competing with the best, the brightest, the smartest in any space. If I wasn't interested in business competition, I would be playing Settlers of Catan all day with friends. Because it's a board game. You compete, you win. I'd be playing flag football on the Zilker Park drill field here in Austin, Texas. I'd be playing Power Grid, right? So I just love competition. And what I see business as is you are picking a competition you want to play when you pick your market and whatever you're selling. The rules are established. The first decision you have is, do you stick with the rules or do you break them, right? The second is, once you sort of copy what already exists in your market, what unique twist can you add that no one else can replicate? And then how do you win? And the measuring stick in business is money. So that's why I look at money.
Gotcha. Do you break the rules?
There are a lot of things. I mean, I don't think any PR firm working with a podcast host would ever advocate for the podcast host to market themselves as the most sued podcaster. But I guarantee you, your audience is listening right now going, this guy's really the most sued. Why is he getting sued? I want to go listen, right? So, I guarantee you no one's ever paid, a major media outlet to write a negative article about them specifically to give their haters something to share on social media, where the headline includes the word con man, right? To really make it feel real. This has worked. This trick has worked on some of the brightest minds on Twitter. They don't even realize what I'm doing to them. It's incredible. So yes, I mean, we're breaking all kinds of rules.
This is what I'm talking about. You seem to lean into being controversial, but like for me, I get it. It works totally. It's working for you, and kudos to you. But I can imagine a lot of people saying, like, on a personal level, they maybe wouldn't like, getting, Twitter storms. I'm actually not personally on Twitter, but kind of that negative. Like, how does that kind of impact you, personally? It seems like you're pretty comfortable with it.
Well, I need smarter enemies. I wish these people hitting me on Twitter were better at it. You want that equal and opposing force. Your CAC to get a hater is cheaper than your CAC to get a lover, right? And they both listen. And if my revenue model is sponsors, I just want the listen. So it's cheaper for me to get more people hating me. Howard Stern signed a $500 million deal with Cirrus based off people listening because they hate him, right? There's nothing wrong with their strategy. The problem is most people aren't tough enough to deal with haters, right? So, I stand for something very specific, which is VC-backed founders have TechCrunch, bootstrap SaaS founders have Latka. That's who I celebrate. That's who I love. That's who I promote. I retweet people when they get their first customer. And so I will always fight for that, which means I will always hit VC-backed founders very hard when they come on my podcast. And many times they don't like it because they're used to having Forbes and TechCrunch bow down to them and their $20 billion valuation, and I won't do it. So that's why it's controversial, but it works.
So it does very much seem like, going back to my question before, saying you seem to be driven by money, and you're like, you could see your instant response was like, yeah, you just wait and see. But like, why? What is it that drives you? I mean, you said you want to compete, but like, do you really need to build the biggest building? Do you really need to have all this wealth? Like, really, like, why do it? And it's
No,
especially to especially at the expense of what I just said.
it's the same reason I do the podcast, which is competing with this sort of structure. I'm learning faster than anybody else. I can guarantee it. There's nobody that's learning as fast as I am in SaaS. There's no one that's interviewed 3,500 SaaS founders daily, for 5 years. I'm learning extremely fast. It's the same reason. So to answer your question, it's not about building the biggest building. It's about saying, I'm going to write a book and try and sell more copies than Ryan Holiday's last book because I'm going to love the process. I'm going to freaking love the process. So the only way you can do what I'm doing is you have to love the day to day, right? And I do. I know that if I go say I want to go roll up the most mobile home parks, even if I don't roll up the most mobile home parks and beat Sam Zell, the process there for me to learn is driven by the competition, and I'm going to learn and retain better because of that dopamine hit I get from the competition.
You must have learned so much. Like you said, you've interviewed 3,500 people. I mean, take the business and the money aside. Like you said, just the personal development of just speaking and interviewing so many smart people. Like, man, you must have learned a bunch. Like, I don't know. I mean, are there any things that like really stick out now? I mean, have you kind of changed the way you do business, or like what are the key things that you've taken with you over those 3,500 episodes? I know that's a really big question, but is there anything that kind of sticks out?
What I've learned the most sort of doing this is how to build rapport quickly, right? We don't do pre-interviews. We don't do any context setting. It's literally on, 15 minutes off. So, I'm asking very personal questions to strangers. What do you pay yourself? What was the valuation? Like, what's your revenue per employee? What's your churn? So, like, you have to just get very good at really caring about people and listening very intensely for the full 15 minutes so that you can build enough rapport quickly to ask these very intense questions. That's really the biggest thing. By the way, if you're curious, the hardest founders to do this with are ex-Israeli defense. Those founders in SaaS by far are the hardest to quickly
Why?
build rapport with and then ask, intense questions.
So that's just like a cultural thing.
Well, they're trained when they go through the defense forces, how like in interrogation techniques, which is essentially what I'm doing on the podcast, but in a smiley way with my Nike hat on in a very hopefully non-threatening manner.
You might, I think, I mean, I'm not sure if anyone's watched all 3,500 episodes, but I'm sure a lot of people follow you. And I've seen a few. I've seen some pretty icy episodes. And sometimes I'll watch some of the episodes and I'm like, did this guy really know what he or this girl, really know what they were getting themselves into? It's like they seem to come on, they have their coffee, they're nice and relaxed, and you're like, bang, right, let's go. And they're like, Jesus, it's like a train hit them. Do you think often people don't prepare for them, or?
I have no remorse for people that don't prepare. I mean, for your show, I listened to Guillaume's episode. I listened to the Active Campaign episode. I'm prepared. And your episodes are longer than mine. They're 48 to 50 minutes, each. Mine, it takes 15 minutes, or even just scanning the iTunes reviews to understand it's been the same format for 5 years. So if you come on my show and you have no idea what you're getting into, that just makes it more entertaining because people go, I wonder if this person knew what the heck they were getting into.
Another thing that strikes me about you as well, Nathan, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking this. You seem to always be on. Like, I don't know, you just seem to be one of those guys that's just blessed with, I know you wake up in the morning and you just like go. And like, are you just one of those guys where your brain is just always on, it's always working? I don't know, you just seem to be like, have that natural kind of like sharp brain.
I mean, look, I think thinking is like sort of a beautiful thing to be good at. And so, yes, I'm always thinking, I'm always interested, I'm always sort of learning. But look, I mean, you come meet me in person and I'm a big teddy bear, right? We'll go on a beautiful hike for 2 hours. You'll quickly learn my schedule. I was at a mastermind in Mexico last week for a week and everyone was very surprised that I took an hour and a half long nap every day. They're going, I thought you're always on. I thought you're intent. No, I get 8 hours of sleep and then I take an hour and a half long nap. I'm always very well rested. So yeah, I'm always on, but that doesn't mean my calendar is packed. I'm actually trying to get closer and closer to a blank calendar.
Gotcha. So how the hell do you get close to a blank calendar when you do a podcast a day? Do you like batch them and do 5 a day? Do you like, how does that work?
More, So it's extreme batching. So 2 days
Okay.
a month, I will do 30
Ah,
episodes back to back. So I'll record 60 episodes each month,
hmm.
which means I'm always building my buffer because you're only recording 30, right? So, or publishing 30. So I'm always adding 30. So we're scheduled out now, like way into the future. I could die today. You'll still get Latka greatness for whatever, 7, 8 months, whatever our buffer. I don't know what the buffer is right now, but it's many months. So it's extreme batching and a lot of coffee. And I just do 30 back to back, 8 a.m. to basically 6 p.m., 2 days a month.
Wow. Okay, that is really extreme batching. I guess the advantage of that is, well, you probably get in a bit of a rhythm and you get in the zone. Like if I do a podcast and then like I do one 3 weeks later, I'm like, okay, and I'm out in the zone, whereas you're just like bang, 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 bang. So is that an advantage as well, I guess?
Huge advantage. It's exactly right. Look, most of people listening right now, you lose most of your productivity based off switching costs. The number one easy thing you can do to get more out of your life, whatever you're trying to accomplish, is to stop switching so much. Turn your phone off, see if you can just focus for an hour with no distractions, and then do 2 hours, and then do 6. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And by the way, that's like exactly a problem I'm trying to solve right now. Just the constant Slack, the constant email, the switching cost is real. It's yeah, you just have to block out everything and just like you have to prioritize your time. You have to be able to say no, and you just have to be able to block out distractions. And I guess extreme batching is a good way to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You nailed it.
Okay, so what about Founderpath? Maybe you can tell me because it's a couple of things that struck me. So it seems like your mantra was that you don't necessarily need to take funding, and that was kind of the whole story behind Guillaume at Lemlist, and that's kind of what you also had that negative experience early on, but now you also have a founder fund. So how do you kind of yeah, align those two things?
Well, I wish I had Founderpath when I was building Heyo. So when I had scaled Heyo to $60,000 a month in revenue, if Founderpath existed then, I could have gotten about $350,000 of cash from Founderpath by turning my monthly recurring revenue into upfront cash
Yeah,
without
explain how
selling
that works.
equity. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's factoring. So all we're doing, anyone listening right now, even if you have as little as $1,000 a month in revenue, all the way up to we have companies that use us doing $1 million a month in revenue. But you can take a monthly contract for call it $100 a month. We'll buy, and so that annual value is $1,200. We'll buy it from you at a discount, so something between $1,000 and the full $1,200 value, and then you get that cash today to go invest in, Todd, right, and PPC services, right, to see if you can get your ad spend working, and then you pay it back over 12 months. So this, I think, our plan. I mean, I think we'll invest billions of dollars into SaaS companies, but it's not a VC. We're not taking equity. There's no board. There's no board seat. It's literally just converting your MRR to upfront cash.
Gotcha. And how's that going? Like, how many companies have you invested in today?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we launched the tool back about 2.5 years ago as a way to help founders understand their data. And what happened is founders started asking me, Nathan, can you help us raise debt capital or equity capital? Or Nathan, can you help us sell? So we did almost $250 million worth of deals in a sort of marketplace model like this. It was high touch, a lot of my time, but it was working. And what happened was I said, you know what, instead of selling these deals off and helping these founders go raise from other providers like Lighter Capital, Espresso, SaaS Capital, Tamaya, Hercules, SVB, etc., I should just raise a fund and do the deals myself. And so that's what we did. I put up $1 million of my own cash many years ago to test it. Then ended up raising a $5 million fund. Now we've raised much significantly more than that. You're actually going to see an announcement here very soon. That's a multiple of that. But let's just say we're well on our way. We have over 2,000, to answer your question directly, over 2,000 founders that have connected to the platform directly. So Plaid, Stripe, because they want our free reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And then of that, a portion of our actually taken capital. But currently there's over $276 million of approved receivables. So that's the amount of capital founders could get on our platform if they wanted, if they push the button, approved. And we think we'll hit $1 billion invested in this form, by 2023.
So is that high touch? Is that where the majority of your time is spent right now?
No, it was high touch. Founderpath was built to make it no touch. We have founders now that can log on to Founderpath once a week and they take more money every week.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So where is the majority of your time spent right now?
Honestly, most of it's spent on reading. I just got done reading a book called Mastermind, which was by this guy it's a documentary essentially on this guy named Paul LaRue, super smart entrepreneur from the States, but then turned into sort of drug lord and criminal. I'm now reading House of Morgan so that I can understand how the banking industry was built and see if there's things I can do at Founderpath. Should we open a bank for bootstrap founders? A lot of bootstrap founders listening right now who maybe have 2 or 3 million in revenue. They go try and buy a house and a bank won't lend to them because they don't have a historical pay stub, but they're rich in terms of equity and cash flow. Well, what if we launched a bank that could be personal bankers for bootstrap SaaS founders, right? These are sort of the things that I'm thinking about today.
Gotcha. What's your favorite coffee, Nathan? If I had $1, every time I see you in a video, you're always drinking a coffee, man. Where do you get your coffee? Like, are you a big coffee lover?
Yeah, so unfortunately I like supporting local brands, but Starbucks is close. So this is the venti Pike's Place with extra cream. I always love holding a coffee. I just don't know. It's like I love coffee. So if I have a sweet tooth in the afternoon, I need a pick me up. I'll get a grande mocha with whip from Starbucks. I'm usually drinking 2 or 3 coffees a day.
Dude, the American style coffee is just so goddamn big.
Oh,
everything's big.
Well,
in
your
the
coffee
States.
is much better. European coffee is much better than American coffee.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, but I agree.
Way better.
Cool. So what else is in the pipeline, man? So is it just more of the same, or what else is coming up for Nathan Latka?
We are hyper focused on celebrating bootstrapped founders. They just
love it.
It's ridiculous that TechCrunch promotes these headlines. Look, TechCrunch should be liable for the billions that WeWork took from investors because media outlets with reporters who didn't ask the tough questions built WeWork when there was no real business. If they asked the real questions in these headlines, there you go. Whoops.
I'm sitting in an empty WeWork building right now.
Too close. But my point is, these outlets are in the bags of VCs. They have to propagate the story of go raise capital. That's what success looks like. And these outlets, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, TechCrunch, they also don't want to hit the founders hard because they want the next interview with the founder. Mm-hmm. See, I don't want to be friends with my guests. If I end up friends, great. I just want to capture the story. So my focus today is on celebrating bootstrap founders who are crushing it. People like Nathan Barry at ConvertKit, who gives dividends and rev shares to all of his employees and team members, broke 25 million last year. Guillaume, who you guys can go listen to on Todd's podcast a couple episodes ago. There's so many companies building great bootstrap founders. And so what I'm focused on now is building more media assets around the space. So we have the magazine, we have the book. We're doing a Latka 1000 SaaS awards show in Austin, Texas on September 10th, which will be an incredible event. It'll be a beautiful awards event celebrating bootstrap founders. And then I'm focused just a lot on sort of Founderpath, right? How do we raise a larger fund at a cheaper cost of capital so we can pass those savings on to bootstrap founders? And we're going to avoid going out and competing. And there's other people in the Founderpath space that have raised gobs of capital, but they're diluted like crazy. They're very distracted. They're not focused on bootstrap SaaS founders. And we're going to win that space by hyper-focusing on bootstrap SaaS founders.
Love it. Maybe on that note then, for bootstrap founders listening, same question I asked Guillaume as well, considering his experience. What advice would you give to bootstrap founder? They want to start a SaaS company. It's like you don't need money. What would be your advice to those people?
Yeah, focus on revenue per employee. The best business is a one-person show doing 10 million in revenue. Right? If your competitor has 100 people and 10 million in revenue and a big valuation and gets a TechCrunch article, you're still way more successful than them, right? More freedom, revenue per employee. So focus on revenue per employee. Ignore the value. Valuations do not matter unless they eventually one day become a liquid in the form of a secondary or someone's buying you. But you have to remember, the higher your valuation, the less likely buyers you have, because they have to come up with more money. So it's much better to focus on building a $5 million SaaS company with $2 million in profits than it is to go try and raise $1 billion and build a $5 billion SaaS company that you can IPO in 20 years, maybe.
Really, really good advice. Something else I listened to, I think it was SaaS Stock, and you were talking about how many agencies convert into SaaS companies. And I was like, for me, I feel like because I mean we run an agency, right? The growth of the agency is highly dependent on having more staff, right? And it's like it's a grind. For me, it was kind of like, oh yeah, maybe we should be thinking about. I mean, we learn how to market SaaS companies all day, every day, like so we're pretty good at that. So I'm thinking that's probably a pretty good move for us. But has that been an observation you found that tons of agencies seem to start their own SaaS companies?
Well, not tons. The most successful SaaS companies, this is how they're built. They honestly, you potentially are the next billion. Like you are the potential, next, call it $20 million revenue SaaS company that's highly profitable because you are working with a lot of clients right now. You are seeing the same problems across like how they manage PPC, and you're going to think of tools to invent for them. And one of those tools that you start building internally will eventually you'll spin out as your own product. So I'm very bullish on that model. I think you are in a unique position to do that. How out of curiosity, how many folks do you have full time right now?
9.
Okay, got it. Interesting. And it's pure agency model. You're sort of trading time for money, right?
Exactly. So we build our own frameworks and things, but it's just retainers and yeah, selling our time effectively, which we need to move away from, but pure agency.
But there's nothing wrong with that, like to build up a nice little cash thing. Because look, there are a ton of individual SaaS tools in one of your spaces. So like you guys are helping folks with paid media, paid social, customer research, copywriting, conversion optimization, analytics, measurement. I can literally name 20 SaaS companies in each of those 6 service categories that you're currently delivering. And the playbook, if I was you, would be to go out and buy a company in one of those 6 spaces that you're delivering services in, sign up your customers to that SaaS company, and that's going to get you more growth quickly. And then you're going to use what you know about building a SaaS company because you're doing it for others right now to grow that thing. And that's where you're going to create a lot of personal wealth for yourself, Todd. That's my personal opinion.
Nice. I love the idea. I didn't think of that one, buying a SaaS company to get myself, kind of take that big jump instead of building something from the ground up. It's really good advice.
And it doesn't have to be expensive. I mean,
No.
and what Andrew's building at MicroAcquire, there's great deals there. There are several I know right now that are doing maybe $500,000 in ARR that you could buy them for 1 to 2x revenue if you understand and you get to the founder in the right way and set it up properly. So it doesn't have to be expensive.
What about agencies? This is a thing that I always come back to is like, what is the end game for upfront media? Because I guess agencies, I mean, I funding and selling companies is not my area of expertise. So I'm always like, at the end of the day, am I ever going to be able to sell Uproar? Am I going to have to hire somebody to take it over? What is your 2 cents on that? Have you seen many agencies sell?
Yeah, the sale price on an agency will be somewhere currently between sort of 1 and 3x EBITDA, right?
Okay.
So it's just not a great. It's a lot of hustle, right? Like if I was running an agency today, what I would be doing is using it to get personally wealthy, so that I could invest in a dev, like co-founders, CTOs, or a dev shop to build a SaaS tool. So like I would be for you focused on how do you build personal wealth from this, and also maybe pay dividends out to the team so you can eventually pivot into a SaaS company. Or if you want to sell, so if you keep doubling down on the media brand, like what you're doing with the podcast, and build other media assets, you could end up in a position like The Hustle or Morning Brew, right, where HubSpot's buying The Hustle for the media business, right? Because it's a moat for them. You could see a SaaS company, maybe like Supermetrics, right? Buying, you're close to those guys. You work with Mikkel, you had him on as well. They could end up buying you because you will then be their media personality, and you build a media business inside of Supermetrics, and they'll pay a premium for that.
Yeah, it's super interesting, the whole media piece, because like a lot of people aren't really willing to put the work in for like a podcast because they want the immediate returns, right? Like for transparency, this is like what, 17th episode or something. I mean, yeah, people come to our website and it adds a lot of credibility that I'm having these types of conversations, but I haven't had one person say, oh, I found your podcast on Spotify or on YouTube, and then like that, it hasn't happened yet. Like you have to play the long game, right?
Don't get discouraged. Stick to it for 2 years at least.
100
twice a month
episodes is the goal.
Yes, stick no matter what, even if nobody listens, because there are compounding returns over time. I can just tell you there are compounding returns over time, and you're doing a great job. The content's great, the guests are great, especially if you're sort of focused. Like I know sometimes you're getting like the VP of marketing, sometimes it's the CMO, sometimes it's the CEO. If you really dominate like one position group, you will be the go-to source for every SaaS CMO. And with that sort of monopolization of that specific niche, it allows you to have pricing power with sponsors that want to reach just CMOs. Or if you launch a SaaS tool and you want to sell it to CMOs, you have pricing leverage there because of the media asset.
Gotcha. Yeah, great advice. Cool. What let's kind of close up. So, what do you do in your personal time? What are some stuff people don't know about you do in your personal time?
I always have a bag of almonds next to me. I'm always eating almonds. They're sort of
Salted or
convenient. No, unsalted.
unsalted? Okay.
Bad for the blood, but bad for your skin with salt. So always doing that. I'm working out once a day. I'm using Whoop to track all of my personal metrics. I'm
Nice.
experimenting with creatine. I do
Nice.
that because I think I don't have veins yet, but I really want like veins in muscle. Oh, I have a little bit. There you go. I got a little action right there. But I want more veins. I'm running a lot. The reading that I'm doing these days are, they come off as sort of like scammy books, but like, Writing Rich is Ray Edwards. These are very helpful with copywriting stuff. What else do I do in personal time? A lot of board games. Love playing board games.
Yeah.
Playing a lot of poker. Poker is a great
nice.
way
Where'd you play poker?
Just at home games and things. The beautiful thing about poker, I'll tell you this, because I think this is not why most people play poker. You win in poker by doing nothing. Like if you can default to doing nothing, you'll generally win. Most people lose in poker when you're 6 hours into a session, you're bored, and you just start playing hands you shouldn't play. So there is no better practice for me from a business perspective than going to a poker table and teaching myself to sit there still for 8 hours and fold for 8 hours and do nothing. That's what I'm practicing, is doing nothing. And that sort of focus and like stability is what enables me to then go take bigger risks elsewhere in life, if that makes sense.
Totally. And you mentioned Ryan Holiday there. Are you a follower of Stoicism at all?
So I haven't read his Stoicism books, but I'm a big fan of just Ryan in general. He's dedicated to his craft. He doesn't care what other people think, from what I can tell. He was helpful for me when I was writing my book, which I appreciated. He owns goats, which I love, and he's here in Austin, Texas. So
nice. How is it in Austin, Texas? They were one of the first states in the US to just like say, "Oh, fuck it, let's just open up."
Yeah, by the way, I'm trying to get more international travel in, so I went ahead and got my Pfizer double vaccine there. It's open. No masks inside. It's pretty much back to life as normal, which is why we said, we're going to do our first live event in September. We did pre-sales. We had a lot of people purchase pre-sale tickets, so everything looks good. I think it's probably still pretty closed up over there, right?
Oh, dude, it's a zombie apocalypse here.
Yeah.
I'm looking out the window now. There's rain hammering. It's like almost June. There's rain hammering against the window. It's pretty much still restaurants aren't open. It's masks in the office here. It's pretty doomy.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Equinox later here in Austin and work out with no mask. I'll probably, just go in the sauna with my protein drink and relax for 10 minutes. There's no masks in the sauna, which, COVID in the air. Sauna is like the last place you want to be if you're worried about that. But most people are most people are vaccinated. I think that's the Biden administration has done a good job rolling out those vaccinations.
Yeah, at the end of the day, listen, we have to be grateful for what we have, and I can't complain about lockdown. I feel blessed for the life I live. So the bad times just make you appreciate the good times.
Well, Todd, I'm super bullish. You came onto my radar like a freaking rocket, many months ago. I'm really bullish on what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing for the SaaS world, and man, I just hope you stick with it for the long run. I think you'll build something really special here.
Thank you so much for your time, Nathan, and let's speak soon.
All right, thanks, Todd.